That is an example of massive killing. Every step was a clear step to deliberate and knowing exterminations. And the Nazis even made the victims of the Holocaust dispose the bodies of those who died before them. I have some photos. What has been referred to as genocide. That's genocide. Next photo, please. That's genocide. Next, please. That's genocide. Next, please. Next. That is a watchtower when you put people into a camp like cattle to be slaughtered. Next, please. That's when you burn them like fuel. When you take their fat and you make soap out of it. Next, please. That's when you bring people to their death, you make train lines into a camp with no other purpose than to kill them. That's genocide. The massive magnitude of Rwanda, the Holocaust, and the lengthy continuing time frame for each is very different in criminal nature to an isolated act over 2 to 3 days that resulted in the albeit terrible murder of about 3,000 people. To speak of an intention of committing massive killings by way of a systematic pattern, one needs to look no further than the images of the rail tracks leading to Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau. Tracks leading to the unfortunate into the camps, to death, to oblivion. They built the fundamental infrastructure to deliver their victims right into the oven door. That is massively planned killing, specifically for Iran now. None of the prosecution witnesses identified Amos Yaron, in any way as directly responsible for the deaths that occurred in Sabra and Shatila in September 1982. Yes.
On this question, please address the documentary evidence, which is evidence before the court, which identified him. I understand that I can be wrong. I'm not talking about eyewitnesses, we're talking about evidence.
I was referring to the witnesses when they gave testimony in court. Shahira Aberdini gave testimony.
I agree with you. What difference does that make? This court has received other evidence than simply eyewitnesses.
It was referred to in the Kane report. I could be wrong.
The prosecutor, both representatives of the prosecutor gave examples, and the books are marked in yellow, I think. Would you address that, please?
The word that was used, that they heard the killings. That was the most that linked Yaron from the evidence that has been presented. I will address this later when I specifically refer to the Kahan report, which is just the next page. No witnesses saw him do anything. Now the Kahan report was cited. It was selectively cited. If we could turn to the prosecution's bundle number 3 at page 2 to 7. It's about 11 lines from the top. And I read. Brigadier General Yaron spoke with the phalangists about the places where the terrorists were located in the camps, and also warned them not to harm the civilian population. Now, that is in the Kahan report. The Kahan report also identifies other people. Now, if we could turn to page 267. The heading starts with personal responsibility. A subheading is the Prime Minister, Mr. Menachem Begin. If we flip a few pages at 269, right at the bottom, the subheading is the Minister of Defense, Mr. Ariel Sharon. We flip a little further at page 273. It is the Foreign Minister, Mr. Yitzhak Shamir. We flip to page 275. It identifies the Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Rafael Aitan, at page 280. The subheading is Director of Military Intelligence, Major General Yeshua Sergei. I hope I pronounced it correctly. The next subheading is at page 284. Head of Institute for Intelligence and Special Projects, Mossad. No name is given. Next, page 286. GOC, Northern Command Major General Amir Drori. And only when we reach to page 289 do we see the name, the subheading called Division Commander Brigadier General Amos Yaron. And for completeness sake, if we go to page 292, the subheading at the bottom is Mr. Avi Dudal, Personal Aide to the Minister of Defense. There are 9 names listed. Former Prime Minister Menachem Begin is deceased. Number 2, Ariel Sharon, he is alive. Number 3, Yitzhak Shamir, he is deceased. Number 4, Rafael Aitan, he is deceased. Number 5, Director of Military Intelligence, Yeshua Saki, he is alive. Number 6, the unnamed head of Mossad, we don't know. Number 7, Amir Drori, he is deceased. Number 8, we have Yaron, he is alive. I do not know about Abu Dhabi. Now, above Yaron, in the Kahan report itself, 7 other people are named. Of them, at least 2 are still alive. Now, why only charge Amos Yaron? Why spare Ariel Sharon? This is the very same prosecution team that charged George W. Bush. They went right to the top for the invasion of Iraq in case number 1. Precisely because he was the President of the United States at the time. Colin Powell was not charged. He was the one. Colin Powell was not charged. Now, Yaron's position in the chain of command is clear. Sharon, Ariel Sharon, was above him. So why is the prosecution paying lip service to command responsibility in this charge? Why? Against Yaron. Is there a personal axe to grind against Amos Yaron? Now, cynic may use the word scapegoat. A conspiracy theorist might go further. I will stop here. I move the tribunal for a verdict of not guilty for the accused Amos Yaron for the defense of Israel. We have made this point. It was made on the first day. That by allowing this charge against the state of Israel to stand and calling for the defense which we are now presenting, this tribunal has impliedly accepted the right of the state of Israel, to exist in the community of nations. Now this is contrary to the stand taken by the Palestinian National Council and Hamas. If references were done with me to our bundle number 6 at page 160. Bundle number 6, page 160. Article 19 of the Palestinian National Charter. It's the second paragraph. The partition of Palestine in 1947 and the establishment of the State of Israel are entirely illegal, irregardless of the passage of time. Page 162. That is the Hamas Charter, Hamas Covenant. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. Even Malaysia does not recognize the State of Israel. A cynic, once again, the hypothetical cynic might even say this is already a win for the State of Israel to be recognized by an international tribunal as valid whilst it is sitting in Malaysia. If I may now move to specific instances. The prosecution in its charge against the State of Israel cites the incident at Deir Yassin. This was in 1948. Now, the answer to it, I am quoting almost verbatim from the book by Alan Dershowitz, The Case for Israel, and it can be found at the back of these submissions, and it is numbered it starts at page 3. Now, although it is not the policy of the Haganah to encourage the flight of local Arabs, there certainly seems to have been the policy of the Irgun or itself, the paramilitary wing of the revisionist movement headed by Menachem Begin and Nakib, or the Stern Gang, headed by Yitzhak Shamir. On April 9, 1948, paramilitary units fought a difficult battle for control of Deir Yassin, an important Arab village on the way to Jerusalem. Battle was fierce, with Hetzel and Nakib forces losing more than a quarter of their fighters. The Jewish fighters were pinned down by sniper fire and threw grenades through the windows of many of the houses from which the snipers were firing. Most of the villagers eventually fled, and Etzel's armored car with a loudspeaker demanded that the remaining villagers lay down their arms and leave their houses. Benny Morris, historian, reports that the truck got stuck in a ditch and the message was not heard. Fighting continued, and when it was over, 100 to 110 Arabs were dead. Many of the dead were women because Arab fighters dressed as women and shot Israelis to whom they had, in brackets, surrendered, close brackets, a tactic employed by some Iraqis in 2003. Some children and old people were also killed. Although there was and continues to be considerable dispute surrounding the circumstances of these deaths, the event was called a massacre, and as word spread, it clearly contributed to the flight of Arabs in surrounding villages. Quote, everyone had an interest, unquote, in publicizing and exaggerating the number of people killed and the brutality of the killings. Oh, yes.
Page 12 of your submission this morning.
Yes.
I'm just interested in your use of language. Page 12, line number 3. Deir Yassin remained an isolated, although tragic and inexcusable blemish on Israeli paramilitary actions.
Yes.
Paramilitary.
Yes.
So those who went around killing were paramilitary. But just down below you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line, the policy of Palestinian terrorist groups. So Palestinian groups are terrorists, but the Israeli terrorist groups are paramilitary. On page 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th line, by Israeli standards, line 10, 11, 12, but by Palestinian terrorist standards. So I'm a little bit disappointed that there's
Yes.
one set of killers are paramilitary, the set of killers are always terrorists. All along it's like that actually. So what's going on here? Yes.
It is probably I have quoted verbatim from the book. I see that on my words, perhaps. But allow me to just jump right straight to the end of my submission to explain this point. Second, last page. Page 22. The last paragraph. Now, this trial, and especially the preparation of it, has taught me a lot. Words are important. Words are actually our stock and trade for lawyers. It's what we do. We define words. We explain them. Now, in a cross-cultural context, then words are even more so with definition. I have just learned only yesterday that the phrase lah in Malaysia, we all say lah to almost everything. Come on lah, come lah. A pleasant surprise. I was informed yesterday that in Arabic, come lah means, can lah means cannot. Simple word. And these are things that words. And let's take the most obvious example. IDF. IDF officially means Israel Defense Force. No Palestinian, I don't believe any Palestinian would refer to it as a defense force. It always is referred to as Israeli task force or Israeli occupation force. And words will be used by both sides differently. One, and Professor Shah, allow me to, I believe you often quoted the example, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And I remember that. And that is true. Which side of the wall you're on will color your use of nouns and adjectives. So, yes, I do apologize if they are not quoted verbatim from the sources that I have quoted. If they are indeed my words, I am so sorry. Sabran Shatila. Nothing was said so far about, at the time, the PLO was attacking Israel from Lebanon. Kissinger defended Israel's operation, and the quote is, quote, "No sovereign state can tolerate indefinitely the build-up along its borders of military force dedicated to its destruction and implementing its objective by periodic shelling and raids," unquote. That is the background, which was probably an oversight that was missing in the presentation on Sabran Shatila 1982 so far. I will move now to the incident of Jenin and Nablus in 2002.
Excuse me, Counsel. Sorry to interrupt, but I realize that many references have been made through the book made by Alan. Can you just give me a brief summary of who he is?
Alan Dershowitz is probably best known as the Harvard Law professor, and he takes on, he has written extensively and has spoken publicly extensively on behalf of Israel and the case for Israel. He had compiled them all into the book, The Case for Israel, to explain what were the explanations.
Is he an Israeli or what is he?
He's an American. He's an American. And of course from his name.
Dershowitz?
He's a Jew. He's a Jewish American.
Thank you.
America did well have double citizenship.
Yes.
Is he by any chance an Israeli citizen?
I'm sorry, I would not be able to.
Just to clarify this, yes. Surely we are aware this is not an issue between angels and devils. I think wrongs, atrocities have been committed on both sides. But I just noticed how I'm trying to weigh the veracity, the reliability of the evidence by this learned Harvard professor. Is he a balanced person or is he a totally partisan? So that's why I noticed how within the same line, the same paragraph, in the language he used, that goes to show how balanced he is, how much we can rely on his testimony.
Thank you for the point. To an earlier point, whether Dershowitz is American, and he has been quoted as saying, "Were I an Israeli, I'd be a person of the left and voting the left." That's his quote. Without breaking privilege and confidentiality, we do know that this issue inflames people, and sometimes intemperate words are used. And I thank Professor Shah, Judge Shah, for pointing out that it is not a contest between angels and devils. Thank you for that. I was about to go on and on, actually. I was about to go on and on. That's the elephant in the room. That's the elephant in the room. Israel keeps saying terrorists, human shield, attacking civilians. Suicide bombing is the elephant in the room. So, where do we go from here? Who's more bad? Or is it a issue about land purely, or is it a religious issue? I wish I could answer that on my feet, but I will be getting to that at page 18 of my submissions. But I think I better stay on track with the flow that I have. Yes, and the Network Council has also pointed out in the Irish experience, in the IRA, they call themselves paramilitary, UK calls them terrorists.
Semantics.
Yes,
It's semantics, yes, but there should be some consistency of usage. That's all. Yeah.
And yes, if we were to say Dershowitz is inflamed, yes, from his words, clearly from the book. But he's writing the book entitled The Case for Israel. Obviously, he's going to structure it as an advocate would. I wouldn't, but he would. So that it is. Let me just speed up things. Cast 2009. I could go through it, but I've included in my bundle number 5, which are the IDF reports. Now the IDF came up with a report. They came up with 2 reports. Forecast that. First one is at page 3. It is titled The Operation in Gaza, Factual and Legal Aspects. The second IDF report is dated January 2010. It is titled Gaza Operation Investigations and Update. I could bore the panel by reading the parts, but the point that I wanted to make is this. After Castlet, they made a report. They reported what they did. If you're going to kill people willy-nilly, you don't report it. And part of the reason for us knowing so well about the details of the Holocaust is because of German efficiency. They're efficient, they keep very good records. But having known that example, who would do that if an atrocity was committed? The Goldstone report. Goldstone issued the report, and generally it was against Israel, as quoted, but in response to the Goldstone report, there is an official Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement that is found in bundle number 5 at page 1.
To go back to the IDF reports, you said they have done 2 reports. Can you just give us a couple of sentences what the reports contain?
I'm sorry, I will. So I will now refer to the IDF reports made after Castlet. Okay, if I may turn your Honor's attention to page number 8, bundle number 5. And this is just a summary portion. The executive summary as paragraph number 3. The paper addresses the context of the Gaza operation and notes that Israel had both a right and an obligation to take military action against Hamas in Gaza to stop Hamas's almost incessant rocket and mortar attacks upon thousands of Israeli civilians and its other act of terrorism. Israel was bombarded by some 12,000 rockets and mortar shells between 2000 and 2008, including nearly 3,000 rockets and mortar shells in 2008 alone. Hamas specifically timed many of its attacks to terrorize school children in the mornings and the afternoons. At paragraph 4 lines down, it refers to Hamas also orchestrated numerous suicide bombings against Israeli civilians and amassed an extensive armed force of more than 20,000 armed operatives in Gaza. Page 59 of the same bundle, from paragraph 145. For many years, Hamas engaged in deliberate, systematic, and widespread use of rocket attacks, mortar attacks, and suicide bombings intentionally directed at civilian targets in Israel. The international community, including the United Nations, the Quartet of Middle East Mediators, the European Union, the United States, the United Kingdom, and many other states and international bodies have condemned Hamas attacks. The citations are at bottom in the footnotes. 146. Paragraph 146. Hamas's rocket attacks directed at Israeli civilian population centers deliberately violated the basic principles of distinction between combatants and non-combatants. Any doubt about this is resolved by the fact that Hamas itself boasted of its intention to hit population centers. It is well accepted in customary international law that intentionally that's normal. Paragraph 147, the second last line on page 60. The United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs stated that, quote, there is no justification, unquote, under the law for the firing of rockets. The next page 61, I continue, because, quote, they are indiscriminate. There is no military target, unquote. At page 62 of the bundle number 5, at paragraph 151, I read, the law of armed conflict not only prohibits targeting an enemy's civilians, it also requires parties to armed conflict to distinguish their combatant forces from their own civilians and not to base operations in or near civilian structures, especially protected sites such as schools, medical facilities, and places of worship. That is the continual complaint, the position of the Israelis that this is what is being done against them. That the attacks are for those. From page 63 onwards, there are specific photographs of in the IDF report of the evidence of such launching of attacks from civilian structures. 63, 64, 65, the photos there. And at page 66, now, paragraph 158. Now, this is the report of a Hamas activist who was arrested by the IDF, who allegedly said he admitted that Hamas operatives frequently carried out rocket fires from schools. For example, the Sakin school in the area of Abu Halima and another school in the area of Al-Hamid neighborhood, precisely because they knew that Israeli jets would not fire on schools. Human Rights Watch, and I have reproduced that the Human Rights Watch in a letter to the EU foreign ministers, and that is in paragraph 159, fourth line, it refers to the Human Rights Watch's letter to the EU foreign ministers. I will refer that later in my submission.